I've personally paid a lot of tuition in my life. Sometimes you pay well beyond college. Sometimes you pay with your time. Sometimes you pay with your checkbook. Why wouldn't you want to take advantage of that? And in fact, you might say, you know what, for the meager amount of money I'm paying this guy, a lot of times it's saving you money, because the property manager, if they're good, if they're actually astute and are paying attention to what's going on in your property, what you pay is far less than what it would have cost you if you had done it yourself. Plus, you learn some lessons along the way.
It is a common saying amongst real estate investors that you make money when you buy, not when you sell. While this catchy phrase has value, it fails to convey how easy it is to lose money through poor property management. Whether you self-manage or hire a professional, it is important to understand how to navigate the common pitfalls and challenges with rental properties without losing your shirt or your mind. That's why you have tuned in to Maximizing Your Property Value, the apartment owner's guide to operating rental properties as a successful business. I'm your host, John Stiles, real estate agent and team leader of the VIP Real Estate Group at Bridge Realty. As a current multifamily investor and former property manager myself, I understand the headaches and difficulties of keeping an investment property from becoming a money pit and time sucker. It takes a solid business plan, it takes tested systems, and it takes key team members to actually find success. So let's take a deep dive and maximize your property value. Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Maximizing Your Property Value. My name is John Stiles. I'm your host, and I'm pleased to have with us today Scot Pekarek. Scott, thanks for coming in.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
So, Scott, you grew up on a dairy farm in central Minnesota, but made your way to the Twin Cities, and where you now are the owner-broker of Verde Real Estate Group.
Correct.
And you're also a podcast host, an aspiring author, and you have a brain tumor, which we'll, maybe touch on a little bit later. But Scott, why don't you fill in some of the gaps there for our audience and just explain how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I grew up on a dairy farm in central Minnesota. Nearest town was, I believe, Little Rock. It had a creamery, a feed store, and I think maybe 3 residents. At the time, I didn't appreciate farming for what it was and the lessons I was learning. But it was later on in life, as I went through St. Cloud State University and 300 keg parties and lots of sales training of plastic cups, I realized that the lessons I learned as a farm kid, working 8 days a week, 25 hours a day for no pay, were good lessons in terms of hard work. But the evolution came when I finally got into a bartending job where long hours, but I realized I could influence my income with through my hard work. As a server, as a bartender, you got an hourly wage, which was usually minimum wage, but you always could define a little bit, or a lot, what your income could be. So I went to St. Cloud State. I was going to be an engineer, got into business, started an IT career back in 1998, which, if you remember that back then, that was the Y2K issue, and also the internet boom, the .com boom was going on. So I was kind of a terrible student for my first couple years of college, but then I got the business MIS degree. Things completely turned around because I found out I loved it. Unfortunately, getting in IT, I found myself doing more of the programming, more of the mundane, in the cubicle kind of work. And not that there's anything wrong with people who do that. I think it's fantastic. You can earn just a phenomenal living and have a great life. But I felt like I was missing something, and that something was that excitement of being out with folks every day, selling, and selling is, building relationships and educating people and providing value. So someone suggested I take some real estate courses. So I had no idea what was going on with that. But I went to class. There was a buddy of mine who owned a duplex that I was living in with him. He said, "Well, get your license, and then we're gonna buy multi-units and turn them into condominiums. This was 2001, 2, 3, somewhere in there, like the whole evolution. His comment was, you need to get off the fence. You're not happy with your job, quit it, do something else. So I got my real estate license, marketed a building, he converted into condominiums, and I had this great idea. I'm going to market the fact that I know how to do this, renovate, and take a rental and sell it off for maximum, highest and best use, right? Maximum return. And I'm going to market this to other people who own properties versus, going out and trying to buy them myself. And my career took off. I was working part-time at Target Corporation. Sorry, Lori, who was my manager back then. But I got so busy that one day I'm like, I have to quit, because that next 12 months from quitting, I did like 100 transactions and rode that wave through, 2007, 8, until the big one hit, the big crash of 2008. And luckily at that point, and I'd owned a few rental properties, but I basically sold off most of my portfolio as condominiums, my multi-units. I had a few left over. 2008 hit, and nobody really knew what was going on, because we knew, back in 2006, I knew it was coming. There were a lot of canaries dying in coal mines. And I decided, okay, look, this is, I barely knew what a short sale was. REO, I thought, was like Speedwagon, right? A band from the 80s. Keep on loving you. Is that REO? So anyway, but I said, okay, I'm going to pivot. I hired someone to simply just go out and sign me up for property disposition companies. People who've dealt with bank owned, real estate owned is what REO means, for those of you that don't know. And all this guy did was sign me up. I paid him to get me contacts and get me on lists of people who would market properties that banks were trying to liquidate, that had been in foreclosure. And it was a bizarre time. I mean, absolutely, we go into houses, it was sad. Like, you go into houses that it looked like it was the week after the apocalypse, and people had just decided to get up from dinner and walk out of the house. And we did things like cash for keys, and there were some sad stories. There's a woman who lost her husband. I got her like double what the bank was going to offer, because I felt compelled to help her out a little bit. And 2009, I think I did about 200 transactions, 250 in 2010. But the real opportunity wasn't selling $25,000 houses and making $400 in commission. I know that sounds like really attractive and lucrative, but what was there was a law firm, and they said, we lose money on every deal, but we make up for it in volume. Felt like that sometimes in doing some of these, because I deployed like 3 or 4 people to help me, do broker price opinions, property inspections and stuff. It was just incredibly time intensive. But what we were effectively becoming was property managers, as much as marketers. And through that process, I had a lot of clients coming to me like, hey, we're upside down. We don't really want to sell and write a check. Will you manage our property? I'm like, gosh, I don't want to do that. Like, I've had my own rentals. They're a headache, but I reluctantly did it. And the reason is that I wanted to be the guy who helped them in their time of need. So when they came time to sell, they would call the guy who helped them in the time of need. So slowly, like, my first property management software was an Excel spreadsheet, which was absolutely terrible. Like, it was the worst idea ever. And, because I didn't actually use it the right way. Like, you can make some pretty sophisticated workbooks and tie it in with Access and just crazy cool stuff using some of the tools in Excel, which I wasn't doing. So I finally found this property software called Buildium. That started getting me organized, because before I knew it, we had 100 units under management. I was at a local large broker, and they weren't nuts about us doing property management, because there's rules, with trust funds and stuff. So we basically had to run, this is a primarily residential brokerage, and we had to run money through their trust account, which they weren't doing locally. They were doing in a regional center. And what would happen was we'd get rents that we'd send the checks in, and we wouldn't find out about the NSFs if they bounced. until like 4, 5, 6 weeks later. So imagine having that conversation with your client. Oh yeah, by the way, the rent from June, and this is mid-July, the rent check from June bounced. So we're trying to collect for you. The first question is, well, why are you telling me this now? So that created some unique challenges. It got to the point where we were doing, we got to 150 units, and it got to the point where it just didn't make sense to stay. So I'm like, all right, well, now I can do, fulfill my lifelong dream of being my own broker. And, that I did have, I wouldn't say dreams or aspirations of doing that, but being your own broker brings some unique challenges, right? I didn't know how to even, lease a copy machine, so I had to go through this evolution, this period of growth. This was like 2012, I believe. And, I just remember we rented this office space in Uptown, and it was above the Dunn Brothers Coffee on 34th and Hennepin. It was me and one assistant in this office. And I'm just like, okay, now what? Well, fast forward 3 years later, we had 15 agents, three full-time staff members, 3 or 4, I can't remember, maybe 5, and then we were managing like 300 doors, and then it's consistently grown every year, really throughout without a lot of marketing. Like we're doing a little bit more now than we used to, but it's all been word of mouth. We managed 6 or 7 homeowners associations now, maybe 8. And we don't take on everybody. We have about 500 doors of rental that we manage. One of the big opportunities, though, that during the crash is I started buying properties. So you could buy houses for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, and now I own like 100 doors. And through that process, those were they were the worst of times, but they were the best of times if you had access to capital. And for me, I haven't been as active the last few years, but back then I was very active. In fact, there was a bank and a banker who, if I could give him a hug right now, I would, because I was able to take. Well, here's the deal. I had about $50,000, and I'm like, I got to buy some rental property. I got to buy these properties now because I know I can buy them for 30, 40 grand, put in $10,000, $20,000, and rent them out from $1,100 to $1,500 a month. And if I leverage that, my cash flow is going to be $700, $800 a month, all in. So there was a local bank that if you buy a property cash, fix it up, they'd appraise it and give you 70% of the appraised value and leverage. So I remember at one point I had 8 to 10 contracts out. I needed like $500,000, $600,000. I had about $50,000 in my bank account. These are all cash deals, right? So I'm like, how am I going to do this? So it was just, those credit card offers you get where you can pull cash out right away. Well, I would take, I filled out like 10 of those, how much will you give me, and try to do them all at once. So my credit didn't get a hit all at once. And, I got some money that way. I took out a 401k loan and borrowed money from my brother and just started taking down these properties and trying to get them fixed up. And a lot of times, fixing them up, renovating was paint and appliances, maybe flooring. So you would get a property, you paid 30, you'd put in 10, you get it to appraise for $60,000. So you'd be getting a check for $42,000 on a property you maybe had $40,000 all in. It was the Carlton Sheets no money down program, except that I put the money down in cash. So I did that, and I'll tell you, I was able to buy every property but one, which was a short sale that ended up, they didn't approve it through the redemption. I wouldn't have been able to buy it anyhow. So it was that experience that kind of, gave me the power and this mindset of, okay, now let's really go after it. And I've subsequently retraded a lot of those properties. I think we owned like 50 single families, and we've traded them into better addresses, more higher value properties over the years, and continue to do that and move up. But it's one of those things where you change your mindset. And I'll step back a little bit. I don't mean to pontificate. But, like one of those watershed moments of my life was back when I decided I wanted to get into real estate. I read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And you talk about shifts and mindset. That book, I came from I love my parents. They're good people, but we had a mindset of scarcity, right? Versus that of abundance and prosperity. And that can really limit what you as an individual can believe is possible. John, I'm sure it's you if you don't believe it, you can't achieve it, right? We are, once you've discovered the power of intention, like if I intend to be, you can apply that to any part of your life. In business, you can apply it to, your spirituality. You can apply it to health. My intention is to be a healthy person. Well, what does that look like? All right, well, working out every day. Well, what does that mean? And the more you can define that vision, the more likely you are to be able to get there. But it starts with just, dropping those limited beliefs and unlearning what you've been taught in a lot of cases. So, and I'll give you a great example of that. I was, and these are the easiest questions you've ever asked anyone, aren't they? Because you like, I just keep going.
Yep, go ahead.
All right. So the back in, I believe it was 2000, 2001, I was working at Target in their IT department. And there was this guy, Keat. Keat, what's your last name? Oh my gosh, I can't remember it right now. Anyway, he was just a wonderful person. And he came up to me, he's like, gosh, Scott, you're always working so hard. And you're just such a great Java programmer. And those of you that don't know what Java is, it's a programming language. Sun Microsystems back in the 90s came out with it. And, Java's claim to fame. They had the Java virtual machine. You could basically run it on multiple different devices, and it wasn't dependent on, mainframe computing like the OS 390, whatever. It became a very popular object-oriented programming language. Well, the great thing about Java was it was hip, it was cool, it's what everybody wanted to know at the time. So he's like, Scott, you should go interview at St. Paul College. They're looking for a Java teacher. I'm like, in my mind, I barely know how to spell Java. Like I had very little, like I knew nothing. Okay, nothing. Like I knew a little bit, like Hello World. I couldn't get to work, which is always the first program you learn, where the screen just says Hello World. Anyway, so I go interview. I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna go interview. I'm not gonna let this guy down. So I interview, they give me the job. So I got it was like a 16, 17-week course in Java programming that I just agreed to teach, and I knew nothing. So I got the book. I had to set up the computer, the database for everyone, get everything loaded in their Sun Microsystems computer, their Unix system, which I had no idea what I was doing. I finally figured it out. And then I stayed 1 week ahead of the class in the book. But the whole time was a belief, I'm like, you're going to do this. You're going to get through this. That and a lot of guest speakers who really knew what they were talking about. And the way, and that was really good for the students because I brought in real life people who they could network with and hopefully help get a job after they got their degrees and stuff. So, the power of intention and belief, truly, truly powerful. Teach a class on something you don't know.
Yeah, that's the best way to learn, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, very good. So, well, why don't we bring this back to your management company today? What would you say? I think you mentioned you have about 500 doors that you manage, or
yeah.
What would you say it is? And then what would be the kind of ideal clientele? Is it a lot of single families, multifamilies?
It's a great question, and you really need to define, who you're going to serve, and when you get into any business, really, because if you say I'm going to be all things to everybody, that ends up many times just creating chaos and catastrophe. For us, we're the small to medium-sized property. We'll do the single families. We do a lot of that, condos, townhouses. We're not set up to do large community management. I think our biggest right now is about 30 units. So and it's really manageable, and our team is well suited for that kind of management. I will tell you, we do have we have standards of what we're going to take for an owner. We don't want everyone. There are some, again, great people who've got a business model where, they don't want to spend any money. Their goal is to every month, if they get a $25 maintenance fee, they're mad about it. And, that's fine, but that's not a fit for us. I'm a believer you should be doing at least annual walkthroughs, preventive maintenance walkthroughs in your property, probably, in the fall at minimum, and in the fall being August, September, before it gets cold, checking furnace filters, boiler, water levels, for leaks, our tenants disabling smoke detectors, DC rot, because that minimal investment can save you thousands of dollars, and that's the philosophy I have with my properties that I own, and that's what we have as an expectation for the people we work for, and because we believe that's one of our core values. If you do, if you do an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and you can apply that to many areas of your life as well. But and we have had people we've turned down because they don't share that philosophy, and sometimes you don't know that until you're a few months in, or even sometimes a year, and you in some of those relationships we have to sever because it's just not a good fit. It's like wearing a glove that's too tight. Get a different glove, and that's fine. Like I respect anybody who wants to run their business a different way, but that's not who we're looking to work for. We're looking to work for people like we have competitive fees, we have 24/7 maintenance services. We encourage the property inspections once, even twice a year, because I believe that your tenants are a reflection of your properties and vice versa. So, and if you've got to be really careful that you don't get into that death spiral, where you let your properties go, suddenly you start lowering your rental standards, and next thing you know, you got your property has a virus. It's a virus called bad tenants, and they infect the whole place like a cancer. And and I've seen it happen to different people, and I've come into situations where owners have let it happen, and we've had to clean it up, and it can be brutal. You have to, basically. I did a couple last year. A couple. It was an 11 unit and a 12 unit where. I'm like the owner. I'm like, your rents are 25% below market. Like he showed me his rent roll. He's like, yeah, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, well, let me look at your units. Well, it took me about 8 seconds to know why. Okay, his building wasn't maintained on the exterior. The common areas were garbage. He had a caretaker, wasn't doing the job. So first thing we did is we fired the caretaker, kicked him out, and we just started methodically going through the list. Okay, who's the rottenest egg here? They're gone, and then I told him you're gonna have some vacancies. You're gonna have some pain, all right, and that was embodied by the fact that we were 1 month in, and the SWAT team shows up. To get the drug deal, and you're getting complaints from the neighbors. And it was like, whoa. New sheriff in town, give us 1 year. And sure enough, rents are up 20% already. We've gotten rid of every problem. And now the one who's the biggest problem would have been the best tenant last year. So we're getting our rents up, less headache, less turnover, less complaints. Working on a second building that we're about halfway through on that. And I know it's a lot more work for us to do that, but it's always you get that satisfaction when you're done and you get a client for life then. And they're like, you know what, you did that like incredibly reasonably in terms of fees, and now my life is much better. Plus I'm not dealing with the headaches, So, we'll take on those properties with the understanding it's got to be by our program, it's our standards. A lot of times these places, when they're smaller, they got caretakers who are renting to anybody, who aren't maintaining the properties because the owners are absentee. They're not checking up on them, and you do yourself a great disservice, right? And you definitely don't want to get on the wrong side of the municipal authorities, whether it be the police department or whoever else that you're annoying, right? Because suddenly, if you're on their bad side, suddenly you get a lot more inspections, right, and fines and stuff, and you want to have a symbiotic relationship with the municipality. Even if you don't agree with what their policies are, you have a choice. You own a property in this neighborhood or this city. Those are the rules.
Yeah.
You can't play Monopoly by your own rules, right? Or you can, but then, probably get the board flipped over on you. That's my wife's favorite go-to move when I beat her, by the way.
Well, I love that example of repositioning that property. A lot of people just focus on buying the property or selling the property, but there's all this time in between where there's managing the property. And what would you say are maybe some of the key ways that owners mess up in management and just let things get out of hand?
Well, number one, not being realistic about where your rents are, and I'll give you an example. So, the market is the market, and the market is subject to fluctuations. Even micro ones. Sometimes, we'll have a huge demand for 4-bedroom units one August, and then the next August, like it'll be half that, right? So you have to constantly be reevaluating and looking at these little bits and pieces of data and understanding the flow of the market, right? And it's very intuitive to people that are doing it every day. What's going on, because we get constant feedback, notices, how fast things are renting and stuff, not just in one location but multiple locations. Sometimes owners get a little myopic. They're so focused on their building, and they're not reaching out to professionals to help them out. Like the benefit of having 500 plus doors isn't the 500 plus headaches, which they're there, but well, actually usually it's about 5% are headaches, right? The rest are just awesome. And but what owners, a mistake they make too is sometimes overvaluing their property based on its current condition. Now, we've all seen, most of us see that there's a comic where they have, how you see your property, how the appraiser sees it, how the bank sees it, how the tax collector sees it, right? Yeah. Well, I've walked in situations where the owners are like, well, I want to get $1,800 a month for these units, and you walk in them, the fridge is, the appliances predate space travel, and you're like, okay, like, yeah, you can do that, but first the shag carpet has to go. Jimmy Hoffa's remains are in the backyard and they're half exhumed. They should go. In fact, you could probably make some money if you found them, since if we can identify that as Jimmy Hoffa. So let's clean up the bathroom. It doesn't look like Archie Bunker is here sitting in his chair as we're trying to show the place. So like you say, yeah, you can maybe get it. It's having an unrealistic expectation for the rents, and you know how they get it? They rent to lowest common denominator people who come in because no one else will rent to them. So then you have all those headaches that come along with that. I mean, yeah, the people that are willing to pay above market are the people that no one's willing to rent to. All right. The good ones they have lots of options, and you should be dang happy to have them. So that's one thing, not getting their properties improved and not being realistic about rents, and then compensating their rent above market rents by putting in undesirable people. And you got to have straight talk with these landlords, because and sometimes it gets you thrown out of the room. Like they'll say, I don't want to talk to you. That's okay. I'd rather have that discussion up front. Be honest, because you know what you're doing. You have their best interest at heart. And some people, I have a joke. I say we're all liars, right? Every person's a liar, and the person they love lying to most is themselves, right? And we all, and some people you keep a bunch of enablers around you that are also telling you the same stories, right? But my job isn't to tell you the stories that you want to hear, and my company's job is to come in and tell you the story that's going to help you out, right? It's called confirmation bias. I think this, so therefore everything that's happened supports my position. No. In fact, I have my properties managed by the same people that manage my clients. I have the same maintenance people on my properties. I have the same property managers. I have the same systems in place. And the beauty of that is, some people say, well, Scott, am I competing with you? No, you're not competing with me. Each property is unique. Each property is, its own location, its own condition, whatever. You're no more competing with, you're competing with the market, period. But with, having my properties managed, it gives me insight into how do we get better? Because that's the key, is constantly improving. That idea, will never be perfect. And those who strive for perfection are going to live miserable lives. You're going to be miserable. Work on progress every day to get a little bit better. Yeah. Your system, you can fine tune a little bit, every day. We can make our systems more efficient. We don't have to give our property owners increases, right? Because effectively we're being paid more if we're spending less time in the process. Yeah.
It's interesting what you said about just because you're charging more rents doesn't necessarily mean you're getting a better tenant.
Right.
I think we often think, well, if it's a lower rent, it's a worse tenant. If it's a higher rent, it's a better tenant. But not necessarily the truth.
The inverse is actually true in many cases, right? And the amount of rent, the market, the best tenants, I would argue, pay below market. They don't get as many increases, because I'll tell you, there's nothing better than a great tenant who stays for 10 years. Nothing like in the world. If we forget about these people, in fact, what I'm doing this year on mine, the ones that have been really good and have proven to be, and not complainers and whiners, they're all getting a $50 or $100 gift card with an invitation to one, give us some feedback. Number one, thank you. There's gratitude there. We appreciate that. And these are people that, they may be pointing out a lot of maintenance concerns. That's great. I just as soon learn about them up front. And what we're doing is we're creating this idea of reciprocity. So if you do something kind for your tenants, and that's not to say that you want to bend over for them, that's, I don't ever talk directly to my tenants because I'm a little too nice. I want to be liked like everyone or most people. Some people don't like to be liked. I do. But I want them to like me, and sometimes I'll make poor business decisions. There is one guy who I've made the mistake of talking to, who thinks he's my friend, who I should have kicked out 5 years ago, and he's still renting from me because he's always late, but he always pays a late fee. But anyway, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but we're actually showing appreciation to the good ones this year for the first time, real appreciation by giving them a gift, but also asking for something in return, and that is, can you keep an eye on the property? If you know any maintenance issues, can you go to this site and give us some feedback about how we can be better? And and if you really, really want another gift card, go give us a good review, on these sites. And you could say that's bribery, but what it really is it's opening the doors of communication, and it's also showing gratitude. For people who probably never gotten anything from their landlord before, what does that do? Well, heck, they'll probably stay longer, in my property, which means I have less turnover, and less turnover means less expense. Right, which less expense usually means more profits. So that's what we want. I would recommend everyone try that out. That's my tip for this year. Show some gratitude. This concept of Robert Cialdini, whatever. Robert, he's wrote the book Influence, and the book Persuasion, and he talks about this. This principle of reciprocity. It's not other people have written about it and talked about it, but and like you have a podcast show, you bring it on people. That creates gratitude, right? And then it creates this this almost indebtedness, right? Like people want to do something. Life gives back to the giver, all right? And there was a study done a few years back on waiters working in restaurants, high-end restaurants, and these waiters would go and they'd leave the tab, and they were trying to figure out, does doing something nice increase tips? So what the waiters did is when they brought the bill, they added a mint for each person at the table. You probably see this happen in a lot of restaurants now. Well, they found that the tips skyrocket. Well, then they tried it. Well, what happens if we do two mints? Of course, tips went up again. Well, then they added a twist. The waiter would go to the table, waitress, waiter, whatever, leave the bill with 1 mint each person. Turn away, pause, turn back, reach into their apron, and drop 1 more mint per person and say, for you guys, 2 mints. Tips skyrocketed again. So there's all these things that you can do, like if you want to build, you got to be careful. You don't want to be too generous because then suddenly you're their rich uncle. So I don't know. Try it out. I'll be interested to see what happens this year.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's really important for us landlords to appreciate our tenants. They're the ones that are the engine running this business of having a rental property. Without tenants, it's not a very profitable business. So showing them appreciation, gratitude, like you've talked about, is really important. Is there other ways that you've kind of increased the community sense of community at the property, or just encourage the tenants to really enjoy living at the property?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is communication and being open to feedback, even if it's criticism. We've and this is a twist. We would send kind of a more informal questionnaire, and there's better tools that we're going to use this year. We're going to use MailChimp so we can see actually the number of opens, and the survey can be integrated with that. Or you can do SurveyMonkey if you want to, but you want to have this. You want to be able to track. You want to be able to track and see, okay, who opens my messages, who is like what are what is feedback you get? Once in a while you're just gonna have lunatics, right? Like I've been a lunatic at times in my life. Probably my wife would argue all the time. But the reality is that you want to just have clear and open and quick communication. I will tell you, there is nothing I demand more from our team is to respond quickly. And I don't mean respond with an answer quickly, because if you don't know, you don't know, and you don't want to fake it. But respond. You know what? I'm not sure, but I got your message. Okay, I hear you. I appreciate it. Give me X amount of time to get back to you. And I don't say don't ever tell people a number that's impossible, right? There's a guy, Chris Voss, all right? He wrote the book, Never Split the Difference. I had the pleasure of being in Phoenix a couple weeks ago, and I got to meet Chris and hang out with Chris. In fact, I even got him to sign a book for my brother, Jeremy, who's a big fan of Chris. And Chris has this phrase. Well, number one, it's he says if you smile, you're 31% smarter because your body you get a dopamine hit when you smile. And it also helps to laugh. That makes you smarter too and happier. But he has this thing. The saying he says, predictability builds trust. All right, predictability builds trust. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you say I have 24/7 maintenance, and a tenant calls at 11 p.m. and nobody answers the phone, guess what that does? That builds a lack of trust. If you tell someone I'm going to get back to you at Tuesday at 2 p.m., you better get back to them at Tuesday at 2 p.m., right? Or you say, or at the latest, and impress them by being quicker. But what you're doing is you're setting the frame and you're setting the expectation. Now, that can be very, very powerful in building trust. Setting a time and setting an expectation. But it can also destroy you if you don't follow it, right? So with tenants, that's part of the deal. Like maintenance people, trust me, we struggle with this as much as anyone, finding great maintenance people, and we pay our people above market, but that comes well above market, but that comes with an expectation. Like when you're going to a property, make sure you're calling ahead. If you say you're going to be there between 8 and noon, and something happens, communicate either to the office or to the tenant directly why you're not going to be there. They have busy lives, they have commitments. The worst thing you can do is not communicate and not, people are very understanding. If you're apologetic, show empathy. Hey, I know you probably took today off to be here. I'm running behind. Stove blew up on me and I'm on fire. Whatever. My 15th aunt died this month. But just building that being reliable, being predictable, and building trust. That's huge. And it seems really easy, but it's amazing how many people don't follow that, particularly in the property management industry. So that's my never-ending quest.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's really important. Setting expectations and then following through is really important. We're communicating with our tenants, with our vendors, with the owners that you work for. I'm sure it applies across the board.
Absolutely, yeah. The owners, the owners are your lifeblood, just like the tenants. And if you don't. You can never, I don't, unless they tell you, don't, well, I have several owners that they say, don't contact me, ask Scott what he would do, and that's where we try to, at a certain point, I'm like, everyone in my office knows what I would say, so they can just do it, unless it's something, a real doozy, but that's what we want to get with our owners, where they just, because we really are looking out for their best interests all the time. What level of communication do you want? And that's what we strive to, to achieve, or, actually not achieve, but do better than. And many times the owners, they're like, okay, once we have a relationship, they're like, we trust you guys, let me know if it's something major, let me, and I always tell people, look, don't bring problems, bring solutions. Because I know if you're calling me, there's a problem. Give me options, and tell me why, and that's where we add value, qualify what it is we recommend that you do. And people may not agree with our recommendation, but at least they have the facts as we see them.
Yep.
So
that's another great tip. Have you read the book Clockwork?
I have not.
Okay. It talks about systematizing your business, and then I believe it's that book where he talked about empowering your employees to make decisions and come up with solutions like you just talked about. so that you're not just, making decisions for the people that are supposed to be working for you.
Well, that's there was an evolution for me on that. Like, and the biggest one came this year in April, where I went to something called Warrior Week. It's a Wake Up Warrior. It's based in California, and it was a personal development thing, for married business owners who have kids, who were looking to, next level their lives, in the areas of your marriage, your relationship with your children, your wife, spirituality, whatever that means to people. Some people that's religion, some people it's, something else. And my positions on that have evolved throughout my life, raised Catholic, and then, went out in the woods for a long time, at their college and whatever. And, having better health, so one of the big things, one of the most, monumental shifts for me was going out to California for 5 days and shutting my phone off, not looking at, responding to, or acknowledging an email, text, or voicemail. I did set up everything so that people got a message, as many as I could prior. But if they got a message, they were, hey, you have this issue, call this person. Here's their phone number, email. This is their backup. You have this issue. Here's the person. This is their backup. And I will tell you, it was so liberating to come back. The business ran better, probably, than if I was there, because I had created a dependency on myself for so many things that people knew how to solve, and I empowered them to make those decisions. And there's a guy named Dan Sullivan with Strategic Coach, who basically, I'm a member of now, trying to be better. I'm committed to being better every day, not trying to hit home runs. I'm just trying to get a little bit better. And that, that empowered moment of just like, hey, I stepped out of the business ran awesome. When I came back, I said, okay, I'm here as a resource, but I want you all to solve these problems just like you did when I was gone. If you need me, and of course they need me sometimes, sometimes they just need to know I'm there, so.
Yep. Very good. So circling back to the rental properties, we know that with investment properties specifically, the value of it is based on the NOI, income minus expenses. What ways have you found to really increase that income, decrease those expenses so that the value of the property is maximized?
Okay, great question. I don't have an answer. No, just kidding. I have several answers. So the one way is through utility apportionment. And I know this is something that larger complexes do, like, communities, when they're 200, 300, 400 units. A lot of people use, things like RealPage for software. I think PropertyWare has modules. There's a lot of software that's set up for, massively large communities, and I say that, I mean 500 units or so. And that's a different kind of property management, that usually always has on-site staff, always has, people working it. I'm not aware of any that don't. But the smaller single family, small multis, medium-sized multi-unit people haven't been doing that. And what is utility apportionment? Well, basically you take the water, sewer, trash bill and you split it up and you rebill it basically. If there's, it's usually single meter service on most of the older properties. I know some of the new stuff they're putting meters on per unit and stuff so they can do that. And it's, much more automated. But with the older properties, it's pretty rare that there's anything like that. So what you have to do, so there's a few steps. So number one, when someone's going to lease from you, you have to give them the history. I think it's 12 months in Minnesota. And we give as much as we have. Like sometimes that's 2 years. We don't care. We want to be as transparent as possible. So we show them what the history was so they can see the averages. And then we tell them the method of apportionment and how they're going to be built. Meaning, okay, you've got a 2-bedroom. And this is a 4-plex, and they're all 2 bedrooms. Everyone pays 25%. One thing, people always try to trip you up on the laundry. If you're making them pay for laundry, like, what about the laundry, use water? So you know what? You are renting the machines. Now, sometimes we'll say, okay, we're 22.5%. We keep, 10% back for the laundry machines. It doesn't really matter. Pick a formula, disclose it up front, and then charge the utilities back to the tenants. So, and you find that, say the rent's $14.95 plus you got to pay water, sewer, and trash. People don't even think about that. So suddenly you've taken that $200 a month water bill and now you've monetized it. All right. So that's one thing I've done. Heat is a little bit more difficult, not in terms of the math. It's a little more challenging in terms of you get complaints on, oh, these windows are old and stuff like that. And to that, we generally just say, look, you saw the unit, you saw the history. This is just this. It is what it is. Like, it's not new construction. Apparently you realize that now. You're better off if you put something like that into the lease right away, so you can tell people, look, this is an older building. You understand the condition of the windows, the insulation are what they are. Now, the city of Minneapolis is coming out with some new energy disclosure requirements, which I'm not going to talk about today because I'm still trying to figure out exactly what it means, and so are they, from what it sounds like. So that's an ongoing thing. It'll be in my newsletter once I have some more clarity. I tend to not. I don't like to. I don't mind swimming beyond the break wall, but I want to make sure I have a life jacket in case I start cramping up. So utility apportionment's a big one. That's for cutting your costs. And what's amazing with that is how much more responsible the tenants are in the water. Your actual water use will go down. And they're suddenly taking 3-minute showers versus letting it warm up for 30 minutes and then taking a 3-minute shower. They're letting you know when there's leaks, right away. They're letting you know. It's just really healthy for properties to do that.
Yep.
Particularly with the water, sewer, trash. As far as maximizing your rents, kitchens and baths, and just make sure your appliances. People always say, I like showing your stuff, Scott, our leasing agents, because you always have nice kitchens, because that's what people want. If I'm going to be eating in it, off of it, I want it to be nice. So I've been cycling granite and stainless steel appliances through all my, I have a lot of BC, mostly C, great properties, but spend the money on the kitchens, bathrooms. That even might, if you've got a lousy tenant, and I don't mean lousy in they're just nasty, but in terms of they're messy, right? You cannot legislate hygiene. Some people just got stinky shoes and stinky clothes and dirty dishes and things. Sometimes, it's better to let those people move out, clean a place up, and then show it. Yeah, you lose a month's rent, but you end up getting, $150 more a month, so you get it back. So stuff like that, just being aware of what's going on at the properties, if they're, cleaning out the exteriors, time of year, seasonality. Why I don't allow my leases, used to be to expire past September 30th. I'm moving it to August 31st. Yeah, it creates a little bit more of that, warthog going through the Python effect with, extra work on those months. But I get better rents between March and August. I do. I get 5 to 10% or more. And you want to fish where the fish are biting.
Yep.
All right. So keep that in mind. Some people, they say, I only do month to month. You have your reasons. I do. Year plus. If I've got something now, we've got some new clients we just brought on, and we've probably got a half a dozen vacants with these new clients. And we're going to work on them. But I tell them all up front, look. We're going to do a lease of a minimum of 3 months, get to make it end in March, and then we'll renew them. Or, 8 months. If they start in January, 9 months if they start in December, or get them through to 2021. All right. Why is that? Because you're going to maximize your income by renting during the when the fish are biting.
Yep.
So that's key. That's some people don't think about. It seems obvious. There's also. I kind of alluded to it, cleaning up the fronts of your buildings, clean up your laundry area. Sometimes you walk in these laundry areas, it looks like, something out of The Walking Dead, and there's things moving in the corner, clean buildings, fresh paint, in the common areas, a few $1,000, you'll get that back in year one. So,
yep. That's huge. Starting off the leases with that lease ending in the spring or summer, what about if they've been there for a couple of years? Do you continue with that kind of annual lease, or do you allow it to go month to month eventually?
I do not like month to month. Okay, we do. So here's a couple tips. So we don't give a grace period. The rent's due on the 1st. If you don't know where the 1st is, around the 28th, start looking for it. Okay, it's just around the corner. All right, I've been willing to. I've even offered to hire a private investigator for some tenants to help them find the 1st. So I have actually asked my sister-in-law about Henrietta. It's an ongoing joke, but we don't give a grace period. Our late fee is 8% of the past due amount. That is the state maximum in Minnesota. Why that? Because it's consistent. We don't have to wonder what it is. And I'll tell you what, if your grace period was the 10th of the month, you had a 10-day grace period, when do you think you'd get rent?
The 10th.
On the 10th, yeah, if you're lucky. So why do that to yourself? Like people, like my mortgage is, my mortgage, they say I don't get a late fee till the 15th. Well, I should probably pay it on the 14th, right? But here's the thing I had one lease we inherited where the guy had like a 17-day grace period. And the tenant was a real jackass. Can I say jackass on this?
Well, you just did.
Okay, all right. I mean, that's the nicest word I could come up with. A donkey. He was a donkey. Anyway, he really was just a vile person. But and he was always rude to my staff. So finally, I got a little weary of it. Okay, so I just called him. I said, I understand you don't get a late fee till the 17th. I understand that. You've been really clear about that. But do you understand something? What day can I evict you for non-payment of rent? Well, 17th. I'm like, I can evict you on the 2nd. So guess when I'm going to start the eviction proceedings next month? What do you can't do that. I'm like, yes, I can. Unless you change your tone, starting with me right now, be respectful to my staff, and we can coexist in harmony here. We got the rent on the 1st the next month. So, and the goal is not to be a jerk. But you know what? If you want to maximize your revenue, if you've got people who are gonna look, we waive late fees all the time for the good tenants. Everyone they flub up once in a while, and that's okay. But if you know someone's not gonna start not paying, you want to know you want to be sending that demand letter by the 5th, because it takes 3 or 4 weeks to get people out if they're not paying. And we've rented and managed, through every socioeconomic strata that's out there. And, I've been burned a lot by not having a system in place that you have. And again, you don't want to get a discrimination claim against you. So you have to be consistent across the board. And that's our policy, is to have systems and consistency,
Yep.
And so anyway.
That just reminded me back when I rented a place many years ago. And for some reason, we got the message that the rent was due on the 5th, even though it said in the lease it's due on the 1st, because the way that whoever signed the lease with us was explaining it to us, you have till the 5th. And so we just got it in our brains that, we pay on the 5th.
Yeah, not true. I mean, it might be if the lease says it's due on the 5th.
Right.
But
yeah, so somebody later on was asking, so why do you always pay on the 5th? It's like, well, that's when it's due, isn't it? Oh, no, it's the 1st.
Yeah, that's your grace period. And, I don't like grace periods because they create confusion. There's an unofficial grace period if you're a great tenant, and we have the discretion to waive a late fee. But I will tell you another tip for those of you in flyover country like we are. Put in your lease that there is a 2-month fee, a minimum of I wouldn't say minimum, but maybe min-max, whatever, about a 2-month fee to break your lease. Plus, the tenants are responsible for paying rent until the new tenant, that we place begins paying. And the reason you do that is this: we never charge 2 months. Okay, as a management company, we do a tenant warranty for people. We say, with the exception if they need to break the lease, and we can collect our fee from them. The reason we go 2 months is that I didn't used to put anything in there. The state allows for reasonable fees, which I think case law's showing that 2 months is reasonable. But when we didn't put anything in there, and we would quote any number to break the lease, inevitably we'd get complaining and whining and squawking, and just like someone was like sawing off a limb with some of these tenants. But now that we have a 2-month fee, and we say, you know what, for you've been a great tenant, we're going to make this 1 month. Now, what have we just done? We've set the frame, and we've retreated from it. Now they feel an obligation to us because we have done an act of kindness. Whereas 3 years ago, or it's probably longer than that, 6 years ago, I might have said $500, and the rent might have been $1,500. They would have screamed bloody murder. So that's another tip, something we learned. Set the frame, and then you create an obligation and reciprocity with the tenant.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So very good. Well, one other question I want to ask you about management of our rental properties is, so I'm trying to write down kind of a written plan, business plan for my properties. And it's not just for my investment business overall, but for specific properties and what I should be doing, systems and processes, so that when any type of issue comes up, that I know what to do. What things do you think I maybe haven't thought of yet, or things that people, it's been really effective for you to have in operating a property?
So you're trying to, like, just anybody trying to create a business plan, and like, well, a lot of this depends on your level of experience.
Okay.
Starting out, I don't think there's any reason to go it alone. If you've got your first duplex, hire a property manager, like even if it's just for a year, and learn their systems and techniques and how they handle things. Like, you can still learn through someone else's mistakes. Like, I've personally paid a lot of tuition in my life. Sometimes you pay well beyond college. Sometimes you pay with your time. Sometimes you pay with your checkbook. Why wouldn't you want to take advantage of that? And in fact, you might say, you know what, for the meager amount of money I'm paying this guy, a lot of times it's saving you money, because the property manager, if they're good, if they're actually astute and are paying attention to what's going on at your property, what you pay is far less than what it would have cost you if you had done it yourself. Plus, you learn some lessons along the way. Like, if you don't have access to maintenance people, our maintenance guys, we bill them out at like $45 to $80 an hour. The $80 an hour, they're like the really good ones. I mean, you're going to pay a licensed plumber, or someone who may or may not be ethical. Who knows, right? Because the problem is, like, many of these properties, you could have a very ethical person coming in and say, yeah, I see this is bad, this isn't the code, that's not the code, so you got to fix it all. No, you don't. Like, you have different philosophies. Like me being into literally hundreds, if not thousands, of properties in the last 20 years, I can tell you, okay, well, this is 5 years out. This is an immediate need. This could cause this problem. Our maintenance guys are the same way. Like, well, this could, and you're given options. Whereas some people live in a world of absolutes, right? So I would interview a couple property managers, see who's a good fit. If you're new, if you're starting out, and you focus on the big money, like buying another property, and networking with people so you can get the next property, because that's where you're building wealth. You're not building wealth trying to save $60 a unit in monthly property management fees, right? You want real wealth. You want to, like, my wealth has been built by owning real estate, and it's been built up by owning, building a company up. That's because there's recurring revenue there, and that's my recommendation to everyone else. It's a philosophy called who, not how. All right, and I know there's people out there like, I want to do it all myself, and and because I want the experience. I get that. You can do some of it yourself. Right? Don't do it all yourself. Learn from those who've been there before you. That's my approach. I spend over $60,000 a year on coaching for me. Why do I do that? Oh my gosh, you're just wasting money. That's a year's salary. No, I am doing that because I want to be a better version of what I am today, and I want to learn from people who know more than me. And I'm, the first thing you have to do is you check your ego at the door and say, what, I don't know everything, and I can leverage the talents of these other people to catapult me, at a far different trajectory. Now, if you could be someone who says, I just want to live in a duplex and manage it myself, that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you really want to change the trajectory of your growth, you need to surround yourself with people and leverage their time and experience. So that's the first thing I do. I'd get a good, build a great team of people who, again, are philosophically and morally and I don't know, just you feel that, right? You feel when people are aligned with your goals, and you have a connection, and keep talking to people until you find someone like that. Yeah. And one more thing, sorry, because you asked me another question there, which you didn't, but you're gonna outgrow some people too. That's the hardest thing that we have doing sometimes, is letting go of the people that you outgrew. Example, I have several friends I've outgrown. Great people, but you know what? They're just not where I am right now. Mentally, morally, ethically, wherever, And I have professionals I've outgrown. I've got a couple I need to make a change right now, and I've been dragging my feet because I'm very loyal. And I love these people. I love them. I mean, they're good people. But if I want to go to the next step and build wealth for my family and achieve prosperity, I need to find I need to get the next step. And these people can't get me there. And that's okay. Like, you don't never feel shame about aspiring to be more. Do I have to justify things I want? Absolutely not. You want what you want, and that's okay. And that's another, advice I give people. Be okay with wanting more. There's people who are going to try to pull you down and try to tell you that you're greedy, or that, you don't need that to be happy, or, you shouldn't be doing that because it's people from where we're from just don't think that way. Yeah, trust me, I grew up the poorest kid in my school. I had to fight a lot of those voices in my head, and I do today. It's a constant battle against your mind every day. And I recommend you treat your mind and its limiting beliefs like you treat your hand when you want to pick something up. All right, the hand, you're a being with a hand, just like you're a being with a mind. Control your mind like you do your hand, and make it and bend it to your will. So
okay, that's interesting. Well, great takeaway there is to just make sure you have the right people around you that are going to help you achieve what you need to do. Liz, I want to just get your take on where the market's going. We all have been hearing a lot about affordable housing issues, and also just a lot of us investors have been experiencing some great growth in our rental incomes, but we're kind of wondering how long can it really continue? So not asking you to be an economist, but just based on your, the properties you have and how quickly they're renting up and how much increases there have been going on, how long do you think we're going to continue on this way?
The $12 trillion question there, right? I've lived in a constant state of paranoia for about 3 years, because I keep thinking, gosh, it's just not going to get any better. It just can't get any better than it does. And I'm like, well, this is it. We've been in the 8th and a half inning. It's the bottom of the 9th here for about 3 or 4 years, and we keep chugging and we keep chugging. The thing is, it is going to turn at some point, and there's some people that argue that it might be turning a little bit in the Class A stuff, where the rents are $2.5, $3 plus square foot. You wouldn't know I believe, what was it, the Walkway building just sold in Uptown. And I want to say Chase bought it originally from the developer who I know, and I think they just sold it for like a $10 million loss. Okay, they paid like $500,000 a unit when they bought it and sold it for much less than that. So there have been some blunders already, but you're seeing some consolidation in units with some of the bigger players here locally, and at values that I still think are just phenomenal. So what's going to happen? What happened the last time? Well, the last real rental market bust we saw wasn't in 2008-9. In fact, that's when it started improving dramatically, because people who were losing their homes were moving to rental. What you saw there was so the last kind of bust was like 2003-4, back when lending standards basically didn't exist, and they went from zero to less than zero. And you saw all these renters moving into buying. And God bless renters and God bless people, but not everyone is equipped to be buying a house. Banks tend to be a little less forgiving than landlords, and the consequence is a little more dire when you don't make your mortgage payments. I'm starting to see we used to have subprime loans, now we have non-prime loans, and I'm seeing a shift in a degradation, if you will, of lending standards. On we have a brokerage. We have 20 plus agents in our brokerage side, and they're primarily residential people. I tend to do more investment property work, but we're seeing, and I get a lot of emails from different lenders all the time talking about no job, no income, 500 credit, we got to fix for that. Buy a house. So I see some air going in the bubble again, right? And the question is not if it'll pop, it's when and how severe will it be. And many people are pointing to this debt bubble we have, right? Commercial debt bubble. And as long as rates stay low, we kick the can down the road. If you look at the national debt, what's going to happen, if there's a major shock to the system there. The thing is, though, we're the best place in the world to put money. Where else in the world are you going to go put money that's better than the United States of America? Nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. There's nowhere that's better. You can argue there's places that are pretty good, fine. But when we get a debt crisis, that's where we're going to see some dramatic shifts. When we finally overbuild, if rates go up 3 points, and then people, have, a lot of 5 and 7 year notes out there, even 10 that are at, 2, 3, 2%, but, in the 3s and 4s, say that's 6 or 7, suddenly that investment property you bought, you're upside down on your cash flow. So kind of two different things here, right? Like supply demand on the rental side, how fast are we building, and then what happens with debt, and when will that cause a crash? The answer always is it depends, right? And I will say, if you're in Class B, Class C, you're much more insulated against corrections, right? We'll see it at the top first, and there's people arguing it's happening right now here locally. And it probably is because no one's ever really honest about, where they're at. I'm aware of a few newer buildings that have opened and are, 40% occupied, after 6 months. That's bad.
Yeah.
That's bad. Many of these, they got to operate at 90 plus for it to make any sense at all, based on what they're paying for construction and what they're paying for, operating expenses and stuff. So when is it going to happen? If you want me to give a number? I'll say fall of, this may not be popular politically, but, I have a belief that if Trump gets back in, the plates keep spinning, for another year or two. If he does not, then we're going to see a correction because the new administration's probably going to let it go and let it correct and say, well, it's because of Trump. And, that's not me supporting or, trying to bash him. It's just kind of the way of things.
Yeah.
So
it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's a good point you made that the housing market is related to, but not directly tied to the rental market. So
absolutely. Like there's sometimes an inverse correlation between the rental and housing, like we saw back during the crash.
Yep.
So,
well, wonderful, Scott. You've shared quite a bit of great information here. Before I let you go here, I want to give the audience a chance to get to know you a little bit better. And I want to ask you, why do you get up in the morning?
Because my wife spends so much money that I got to. I gotta. It's like the analogy, in the savannah. Every day, the fastest gazelle, or the gazelle knows he has to outrun the fastest tiger to survive in the tiger lion. I screwed that up. Every morning in the savannah, we're going to start over. Every morning in the savannah, the gazelle knows he must outrun the fastest lion to survive. And every morning, the lion wakes up knowing he has to outrun the slowest gazelle to survive. Well, I don't know if I'm the lion or the gazelle, but I'm running. The reality, the moral is, whether you are the lion or the gazelle, when you wake up in the morning, start running. The honest answer, and I'm trying to be funny, but the honest answer is that I really enjoy learning. I really enjoy being better. Like I have an insatiable desire to expand all areas of my life, expand my consciousness, expand my businesses, help as many, by helping as many people as I can, giving to as many people as I can without asking for anything in return. I have twin 5-year-old sons. I have a wife. I love that I can provide them experiences in life. It's not, it's the money, it's important to have money. Like, let's not be ashamed of, having money. But, money can be exchanged for, experiences, right? And sometimes you don't need a lot of money to have experience. Sometimes you don't need any money to experience things like a sunrise, a sunset, a really good thunderstorm, a good snowstorm, a run on a really cold day. I went for a run yesterday. It was 4 degrees. It was like, my body hasn't adapted yet, but go for a run or a walk when it's 10 below outside. It's a beautiful experience. I've recently found out that I've got a brain tumor that could have crushed a lot of people. It does. It puts people. It has the ability to, you have to face your mortality and, could this be the instrument of my destruction? And for me, I took a different approach. I have a YouTube channel called Tumor Tales, which I created, where I'm chronicling my adventures through brain cancer, and I decided to take a different approach. From the morning after the diagnosis, there's a video on my YouTube channel. I did a video of gratitude, gratitude that, you know what, this is something that I'm going to go through. This is something that is I'm going to learn from. That's here. I don't need to be afraid of it. But I also, I do need to have gratitude for the fact that I'm alive. Like, there are some people who die in a car crash. They have a massive heart attack. They, my brother-in-law, love my brother-in-law. His dad, great guy, picking his golf bag out of his car, has like an aneurysm, brain bleed, and instant vegetative state. And my brother-in-law and his sister had to pull a plug on, and his wife Margie, and his name was Mike Dewar, and I quote that a lot because he never got to say goodbye. He never got a chance to fight. Like, he never got a chance to be curious about what's happening to him, and this is something health related. Like, I'm very curious. It's amazing what I've learned. I've decided to take an integrative approach to fighting or to getting through this. And what is that? It means, like, doing things with changing my diet. There's doing a calorie restricted diet, trying to starve the tumor, depriving it of my body of carbohydrates, and sugar. Which, guys, if you're listening to this, stop with the sugar and the carbs. Stop. Or cut them down. Get rid of that sugar. There's stuff called monk fruit that you can use as sweetener. Check it out. It's so, the glycemic index is almost 0 when you're using monk fruit, and it tastes just like sugar. So that's one of my health tips for today. The rest of you have to watch my YouTube channel. But but really getting into the integrative approach, like trying to healthier lifestyle options, things that boost your immune system, anti-inflammatory, just intermittent fasting. These are all things I didn't know anything about 3 months ago, and it's just fascinating to me. Like, there's this whole area of integrative medicine that exists, and that gets me excited. Because look, I'll tell you the stats, not to freak anybody out, but my preference is to live for about 60 or 70 more years. There's huge results in science with longevity right now. Look at Peter Diamandis, doing amazing stuff. His Abundance 360 conference. Maybe not for everyone, but just check out Peter Diamandis and what he's doing. Dave Osprey, he's one who invented bulletproof coffee. He just wrote a book called Superhuman. Check these guys out, and there's tons of other ones. But the stats on brain cancer are pretty alarming. Well, I'll back it up. Stats on cancer are alarming. 1 out of every 2 people are going to have cancer in their life, some kind of cancer. So you either knew someone, know someone, or will know someone who is going to be stricken with this affliction. All right. I asked everyone look at integrative approach to it because it gives you some other options. For brain cancer, if you go on the traditional Western approach, the stats are alarming. It's 2 out of every 3 people are dead in 5 years. All right. If once they receive treatment, and then the people beyond that, 5 years, the 1 out of 3 that survive, it's kind of alarming, like, what kind of a lifestyle they may have. It may not be great. So, I was faced with the instrument of my destruction. I've decided to opt to make this the tool of my liberation, not just from it itself, but also my mindset and changing the frame of how I look at medicine and health and lifestyle. So that's a little bit about me, It's kind of morbid, exciting, but.
No, well, I mean, like you've said, 1 in 2 people are going to face cancer in their lives. So it's really important for us to be talking about it. It's a little bit off topic from this show. However, it's really important.
It's authenticity, right? Like, people don't be afraid to talk about it. That's how we get better, is by having conversations about it and looking for truth and learning.
Well, and I really appreciate your perspective on it. And, like you said, some people might get a diagnosis and just be like, well, that's it. Throw my hands up, start packing my bags. And
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go pick out a plot in the cemetery. No, I'm going to win. And your mindset, like there's a very important mental component to health, right? And there's a very important gut component, like that. Your gut biome is very important to your immune system and stuff. So, what you put into our bodies, what we put on our bodies topically, deodorants and even things like toothpaste, even things like chlorine in our water. I encourage people to do a little homework on that. It's, not everything we are told that is safe, but more than anything, just be willing to think critically, be curious. I always, one of my favorite lines is at some point you look at a child, they're curious. The questions they ask, they're amazing. They're fascinating. My 5-year-olds, I hear what they say, and it's just the world is just this wonderful, all things are possible place. And then at some point in our lives, curiosity just gets beaten out of us by life. Yeah. Try to reclaim that, because it makes you happier. Yeah. That when you find answers that you didn't think were there.
Yep. Well, great. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Well, before I let you go, I want to give you just a small token of my appreciation for you coming in. This is the official Maximizing Your Property Value mug. And
I feel wealthier already.
Hope you enjoy that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thank you to our audience for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, be sure to share it out, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Yep. The opinions shared on this show are for informational purposes only and should not be taken as a solicitation for representation or investment in any specific offering. Please consult with your financial, legal, tax, and real estate advisor before making any investment decisions. John Stiles is a licensed Minnesota real estate agent with Bridge Realty. Thanks for tuning in to Maximizing Your Property Value, the apartment owner's guide to operating rental properties as a successful business. If you're considering scaling up, downsizing, or right-sizing your real estate investment portfolio, it's important to know how to determine your property's value in today's market. That's why I've put together a free ebook for you called How to Calculate Your Investment Property's Value. To get your copy, go to www.realestatestyles.com/value. Now, if you found any value in today's show, be sure to subscribe to our email newsletter, YouTube channel, and podcast through your favorite podcast player. All the links are in the show notes. And would you do me a big favor? Help me get the word out about this show by sharing with your friends on Facebook and LinkedIn. And lastly, we appreciate your 5-star rating on iTunes. I really appreciate you and wish you the best in your real estate investing career. Signing off, I'm John Stiles with Bridge Realty. Make it a great day.